I was recently able to divorce my wife of 15 years of marriage. How did my wife and I meet? We were classmates in the same circle in college. I was attracted to my wife, who was kind and had a nice smile. After a few dates, I confessed my feelings for her and we started dating. We had the same stories and values. After we started dating, we were attracted to each other more and more. But as we started working, it became harder and harder to find time for each other. I knew we would not be able to see each other every day, so we decided to get married right away. We were both still young, but we got married. Neither of us had any money. We had a dinner party with our families and took some pictures, but we were very happy in our new married life. Soon after our marriage, we were blessed with a child. A beautiful baby girl was born. My wife and I, as well as our parents' families, were very happy. Graduating from college, getting a job, getting married, and having a baby, things kept moving so quickly. I had just started working at the company. I was new to the company, so everything was unfamiliar and it caused me anxiety. My wife went back to work right away to support us. My parents, of course, and my wife's family did their best to support us. I managed to balance family and work. Of course, I had a low monthly salary, so we had to save money anywhere we could every month just to make ends meet. I still have nothing but gratitude to my wife, who managed to make ends meet. I wanted to do as much as I could. I worked hard at my job, of course. I was also actively involved in housework and childcare. Then, a senior female employee at work said to me, "It's great that you don't leave the housework and childcare to your wife." I was often praised. My daughter is getting bigger day by day, and the things she can do are increasing day by day. I was moved by the sight of her, and it was a driving force that made me want to do my best every day. I was very happy at that time, but about 2 years ago, when my daughter became a high school student, things started to go wrong. My wife suddenly started calling me smelly. At first, I thought it was just because I was sweating. I didn't really pay it any mind, but still, she said I smelled bad many times. I thought it might be the smell of aging. I hurriedly bought and started using shampoo, body soap, and deodorant spray that claimed to combat age-relating odors. Yes, I realized that I had reached the age that people call middle-aged. It was a shock to me when I realized this fact. I myself thought that smelly middle-aged men were the worst. I changed my towels often. I even tried putting on a little cologne, but my wife still kept calling me smelly. I thought it might be underarm odor or something like that, but it seemed that underarm odor doesn't come on suddenly. If I had always had underarm odor, why did she suddenly tell me that I had a stinky smell now? Maybe, since the beginning of the relationship, maybe I always smelled, but she might have been holding it back. I was really filled with doubt and anxiety. I asked my coworkers, "Do I smell?" My colleague looked at me with a puzzled look on his face. "No, you don't smell bad at all. Well, I don't think you smell good, but we're both guys. At least I've never thought of you as smelly," he said. I asked the other colleagues. The answers were all the same. I thought people might think I was weird for suddenly asking this. I didn't ask any of my female colleagues, but when I was asking other coworkers if I smelled, a female employee under me interrupted, "Are you talking about being smelly again?" Apparently, there is a rumor going around the company that I was concerned about my smell. "Supervisor, you don't smell bad at all. Actually, lately, you actually smell good. You've been using cologne, haven't you? I think it's fashionable." I was a little revealed to hear her say that. "Oh, yes, I have. Actually, it's because my wife says I smell bad, so I started using cologne recently." When I said that, my subordinate said, "I knew it! I thought it smelled good," and that made me happy. "But does your wife still say you smell bad?" "Yeah, she does. I wonder if the smell of aging has seeped out," I blurted out, and my subordinates thought about it. "There are people who don't like cologne, you know. Maybe your wife doesn't like cologne either," she advised me. After that, everyone consoled me and I left the office. As I was leaving, I was so impressed with how kind they were to me. First time, I thought I was glad to work there. Then I went home and asked my wife, "Hey Judy, do you like the smell of cologne?" When I asked her, "No, I don't mind it. I wear perfume all the time, don't I?" she answered. I was a little relieved to hear that, but was shocked to hear the following words. "Can you go a little over there? You stink." I hurriedly moved away and asked her what it smelled like from a distance, but she didn't tell me what it smelled like. "It just stinks. It's a general smell," was all she would say. I gave up asking my wife and decided to ask my daughter. My daughter, a high school student, turned her head away from me and said, "You stink, Dad," she said. "What stinks?" I asked her, but she replied, "It's a general smell." Of course, her answers was the exact same as my wife's. They didn't have an answer as to what exactly smells and how it smelled. To be honest, I was more shocked than when my wife told me. My daughter is in high school. I told myself it might be a rebellious phase. It was all I could do to keep my spirits up, and this went on for a while. Familiarity is a scary thing. By that time, I had gotten used to people saying I smelled bad, but I continued to use cologne and deodorant. When I think about it now, I guess I wasn't used to it at all. I was tested for underarm odor, but I didn't have underarm odor. It had gotten to the point that I honestly didn't know what to do anymore. Then one day, a few months later, I came home and there was no dinner for me. My wife and daughter were being very crude. As always, they said I stink and were no longer sitting at the table together, but until now, there had been a proper dinner for me. But that day, there was no dinner, even though I hadn't called her to say I didn't need dinner. Since the beginning of our marriage, my wife and I have always shared the household chores. We took turns cooking dinner. If I had to work late or had to go out for a drink, etc., if I called her in advance, she would not cook dinner for me. But other than that, we always cooked for each other. I was surprised that there was no dinner. I thought to myself, well, maybe, for some reason, they forgot and ate leftovers that day. The next day, it was my turn to cook, but neither my wife nor my daughter touched my cooking. They went out to eat together. I was depressed and ate my own cooking. After that, my wife stopped cooking dinner for me. She also never eats my dinners. I gave up completely. I started eating out every day and going home. She didn't say anything to me about it, but instead, the harassment escalated. She ignored my conversations, left only my laundry in the laundry room. She left the garbage only in my room and separated our towels, and my toothbrush on the sink was thrown away. They are completely harassing me. What do I do? They told me I smell, but they wouldn't even tell me what it was. What more can I do? My frustration reached a peak. That day, after my daughter went to bed, I called my wife into the living room. She comes into the living room, but she ignored me and started to watch TV. I couldn't take it anymore. What did I do? I raised my voice. My wife ignored me, turned off the TV, and went back to her room. I grabbed her arm to prevent her from doing so, but, "That hurts! You're dirty! Dirty! Don't touch me! Let go of me, you abuser!" She started yelling at me. I didn't grab her arm that hard. I never raised my hand or thought of raising it, but when the word abuser made me flinch for a moment. Waking up to my wife's yelling, my daughter came to the living room. When she saw us, she raised her voice. "What are you doing to Mom?" she screamed. I panicked and tried to get her to quiet down, but her next line froze me in place. "I know, Dad! I know you're cheating on Mom! I know, Dad!" I had no idea what she was talking about. I was confused. "I'm not cheating on your mom," I said, but my daughter didn't believe me. "You're lying!" she screamed. "Mom told me that you were cheating on her. You're disgusting!" I desperately tried to tell her, "You're wrong, I'm not cheating." I pleaded, but my daughter would not listen to me at all. Then my wife, who had been silent until then, suddenly became weak. "It's okay, it's alright," she told our daughter. She was acting like some kind of tragic heroine. It made me feel uncomfortable. She hugged my daughter's shoulders and comforted her. Then she glared at me and suddenly yelled, "Not only do you stink, but you made your daughter cry, you piece of trash! Get out!" My daughter agreed with her, made the same face as my wife, and shouted, "You stink, Daddy! Get out!" And then, "Get out! Get out!" they repeated over and over again. I was at my wit's end. My wife and daughter started saying I stunk because they thought I was cheating. I could see that, but the continued harassment and verbal abuse was out of line. I went back to my room without saying a word. I packed as many clothes and valuables as I could in a large carry-on case and left the house. I spent the rest of the day in a motel. It was cramped, but it was much more comfortable than staying at home. The next day, I went to work with the carry-on case in tow. A colleague approached me and said, "What's the matter? What's up with that big luggage? Running away from home?" It could have been a long business trip, but my colleagues knew I had been asking around about the smell for some time. They guessed right away that something had happened at home. I was at my wit's end. I immediately told him what had happened. My coworker nodded and listened. "That's tough. I'm sorry you had to go through that," they said, comforting me. Then, "You want to come over to my place? Living in a hotel must cost a lot of money," he offered. I said, "Honestly, I'd appreciate it, but I don't want to be a nuisance. It might be a while," so I refused his offer. But my colleague said, "Oh, no problem at all. You can come over today. I'm single, and you can stay until you work things out with your wife," he offered kindly. I thanked him again and again and decided to take advantage of his hospitality. I have to admit that I enjoyed living at my colleague's house. The apartment he had bought to live with his girlfriend, to whom he had been engaged before, had a lot of rooms. There is no need for men to be cautious around each other. When I cooked, he would eat it, saying how delicious it was. We both cleaned whatever needed cleaning, when it needed cleaning. It was a very different life from at home, where I was always worrying about my wife and daughter. A few days after staying at my coworker's house, I realized I forgot my bank card. It was from a bank that I made when I was a bachelor to collect my salary from my part-time job. I don't use it anymore. There's almost nothing left on it. I could have left it there, but I was somewhat curious and decided to go back to get it. But when I got home, I turned the key in the lock, but it wouldn't turn. It seems that the key had been changed. I had no choice but to call my wife. I called my wife, but all I heard was an announcement that the phone was not in use. Apparently, she changed her cell phone too. Then I called my daughter. Same thing. I stood at the front door for a while. I couldn't bring myself to press the intercom. I gave up and went back to my coworker's house. 2 months later, I was still staying at my coworker's house. I couldn't get in touch with my wife or my daughter. I don't know what I'm going to do from now on. I felt bad and told my coworker that I was leaving, but he said, "No, it's not a problem. I'm just worried about leaving you alone. I have an empty room, and you can stay until the problem is solved." So I gave in and decided to stay for a little while longer. I managed to get in touch with my wife. My wife's parents died one after the other when she was in elementary school. She had no siblings, so she doesn't have a family home. I tried to contact her work, but was told that my wife was on leave. I tried going home one more time when I happened to meet the neighbor's wife. "Oh, didn't you move out?" she asked me. "The house is in my name, and the rent is still being deducted, so the lease has not been terminated." I went to the management company and asked them about it, but they hadn't heard anything. I borrowed a key for the new lock and entered the house, but I found that all the rooms were empty except for mine. The appliances had been paid for by my wife and I, but they took all of them. I knew that my wife and daughter didn't want to live with me. I thought divorce was the right thing to do, too, but I couldn't even file for divorce if I couldn't get in touch with her. I was starting to think about hiring a detective agency. One day, I got a call from an unknown number. I wondered what it was about, but when I answered, I heard my daughter's voice. "Daddy, please help me!" I knew something was wrong when I heard her desperate voice. I told her to stay at a nearby family restaurant that was close to the station near my office. I faked being sick and left work early. I pretty much ran the whole way to the family restaurant. When I arrived, my daughter stood up. "Dad!" she waved at me. You wouldn't believe this was the same daughter who said I stink over and over again, with a huge smile on her face. I sat down and took a closer look. Her uniform was wrinkled and she smelled of cigarettes. She looked hungry. Her eyes lit up when she saw the menu I offered. I said to her, "Eat as much as you like. If there's any left over, I will eat them." She ordered 3 dishes and ate them all. I thought that was unusual for a girl who had always had a small appetite. "Are you all right? What happened?" I asked her, as if my daughter had made up her mind. "Dad, stop cheating on me and come back. Please," she pleaded. When she said that, I realized again that she thought I was having an affair after all, but unlike the other night, she was begging me desperately. She didn't seem to mind me at all. I thought she might understand me now. I calmly tried to clear up the misunderstanding. "I'm not cheating. Right now, I'm staying at a coworker's house. Of course, it's a guy. Even if you don't ask, I want to go home. But the locks on the house were changed, and the phone was turned off, so there was nothing I could do." She seemed surprised at my explanation. "What? Is that true?" "Yes, of course it's true. I love you and I love my family. I wouldn't do something like cheat. Do you want me to call my coworker to explain it too, if you don't believe me?" She shook her head. "It's alright. I understand. I'm glad," she said. Relieved that I had cleared up her misconception, I asked her, "But why did you think I was cheating on your mom?" I asked her. She seemed reluctant to tell me, but eventually she spoke. "Mom told me that you were cheating on her." Then she explained it to me in amazement. I asked her about it in detail, and it seems that my wife had been telling my daughter all sorts of things. I started wearing cologne because of the affair. I won't eat dinner because I'm eating with my lover. When in fact, I had no choice but to do it because of my wife's attitude, but she linked it all to cheating and lied to our daughter. My daughter didn't think I would cheat at first, but when I started eating dinner out every day and not cooking dinner at home, she started to think her mom might be telling the truth. I told her what had happened and apologized for neglecting her. She cried and forgave me. She then told me what had happened since I left. She told me that after I left, she and my wife lived together happily at first, but soon her mom said they were going to move out. She told me we were going to move closer to school, so I went with her. And there was a young man there, and her mom said, "I'm going to live with him." My daughter was surprised at first, but she felt like she had nowhere to go now that I had left her. She felt she couldn't talk to anyone about it, so she just had to accept it. According to what my wife told my daughter, the young man was a host. He was working at a host club that my wife had been going to for a while. It wasn't me, but my wife who was the one who was cheating on me, so the young man was her lover. She kicked me out of the house. She was going to bring him in to live with her, but he didn't like my house far from downtown and didn't want to live there, so he rented a house according he wanted. Then the three of them started living together. That's what happened. My daughter has always felt hated it, but my wife didn't seem to care about my daughter's feelings. She took a leave of absence from her job to adjust her life with her host and started staying at home. For a while, my wife seemed to be enjoying herself, but our savings soon ran out, and when she started working again, she became more and more unhappy. My wife's lover was a complete mess. He would smoke in his room, ignoring his daughter who didn't like it. He would come home in the morning and sleep at the door in a suit that reeked of alcohol. And when my daughter came home in the evening, there were clothes all over the floor, empty cup noodle trash, and half-drunken juice strewn across the room. That alone was enough to make both his wife and daughter cringe. After a while, the man quit his job. He was either at home drinking all the time, or when he went out, he gambled away all their money. The daughter was getting close to her limit, but his wife was still obsessed with him, and she was taking good care of him. But one day, my daughter was not feeling well and went home early from school. She got home around noon. She found the man had brought home a woman she did not know. When she saw this, she couldn't stand it any longer. She couldn't take it anymore and finally called me. I couldn't help but to be a little stunned. I could do nothing but gawk for a while, but after it finally began to sink in, I started to fill with anger towards my wife. I said to my daughter, "You did the right thing calling me. Thank you." I told her that I was going to divorce my wife. She agreed with me and said she wanted to stay with me. She offered to help me gather evidence for a divorce. I honestly didn't have any evidence, so the offer was a big help. But I'm going to ask a lawyer for help too, so I told her not to take any chances, and we split up for day. I gave my daughter some money for food. "Don't ever let your mom or boyfriend find out about this," I told her. 2 weeks passed. The daughter collected various evidence such as recordings and photos. I also hired a detective agency to check the comings and goings of my wife and her lover, also coming and going of him and the young woman with whom he was having an affair. After showing the evidence to my lawyer, I was getting ready for a full-fledged divorce. I had gathered enough evidence. "You don't want to go home anymore, right?" I told my daughter, and she nodded her head, so I decided to have her stay at a hotel near my coworker's house. My coworker said, "Would you like me to leave the house for a while?" He offered nicely, and I felt bad about it. My daughter also seemed to be getting excited about living in a hotel. I asked him if he could leave me alone for just a little longer. My daughter showed me around the hotel room. It may be a little inconvenient, but I don't think it's safe for you to go home right now, so just bear with me for a little while, I told her. My daughter said, "It's so nice not to have to live with that man and Mum." And she laughed at me. When I was ready to go, I called my wife's number that she gave me. "Hello, it's me. You know what this is about, don't you?" I was about to say the word divorce. My wife interrupted me. "Honey, I've been waiting for you. Come back." Even though our daughter hadn't returned, and my wife still didn't seem to understand what was going on, I replied coldly, "What? I'm not going back. I want a divorce," I said. My wife didn't seem to understand the situation. "No, what are you saying? I'm not getting divorced," she said, snickering. I laughed through my nose and replied, "No, I'm divorcing you. I already know you're cheating on me and I have proof. Our daughter also said she wanted to live with me. I'm getting custody, and of course, you're going to pay alimony." Then the wife said, "That's worthless. She betrayed me," she shouted. "Betrayed you? She is the victim. You are the betrayer. I'll be contacting you through my lawyer from now on. I wish you and your new boyfriend the best of luck." I was stunned by her tone of voice, which was so unlike a mother's. I tried to hang up the phone. On the other end of the phone, What? Wait! I don't want a divorce!" I heard her yelling and screaming in the background, but I ignored it and hung up. After that, I talked to her through my lawyer and we got divorced without a hitch. Including the time she made me suffer by calling me stinky, I was able to get a very generous amount of alimony. As for the child support for my daughter, I decided not to get child support for my daughter because I didn't want her to insist on visitation rights. Knowing that she didn't have to see her mother again, my daughter seemed relieved. My wife is a beautiful woman and has always been quite popular, but because she married me early, she didn't have enough fun. But that's not enough. That's no reason to cheat on me. After all, she called me stinky too. That was a lie she came up with to get rid of me. I was in a lot of pain, but now that my daughter is back, I don't care anymore. By the way, the other guy, he wanted to live off a woman's money, and he was just looking for a good woman. It was then that my wife started going to his store. His business was stable, and he liked my young wife. Even though she had a high school daughter, he decided to try to catch her. However, my wife said she would take a leave of absence from her job and became a housewife. He was bothered by this, so he started spending the family's money. The wife lost her patience and started working again. I heard she started happily playing around after that. Even though my wife looked young, every time he saw my daughter, he was reminded of her having such a ground child. So he planned to have his wife pay for him to have fun with young women. I was able to get some alimony too. In the end, she lost me, her daughter, and her boyfriend. She is now living in a small apartment. She's living paycheck to paycheck just to pay the alimony, and me and my daughter paid off, moved out of the house, and rented a new apartment. We split the housekeeping duties, and we are getting along well together. The other day, I heard that one of my coworkers who let me stay at his apartment has a girlfriend. As for me, I don't have much to say, but I'm happier than anything to be able to live with my daughter now. Although I had been driven into a corner to leave her mom so abruptly, I know it was hard on her, but now that she smiles and laughs, I'm glad things are the way they are. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. We look forward to seeing you again. Please subscribe to our